Have you ever stopped to think about what really happens after death? What if someone came back to say that they saw the end of times up close, and that Jesus is coming back without giving any further warning? In today's video, you'll hear the shocking story of a former American atheist who died, crossed the borders of the invisible Psi, and returned with a terrifying warning. This is the last call. Get ready for prophetic visions, shocking revelations,
and images so vivid they'll chill your soul. Before we begin, like the channel to support it, subscribe for more testimonies, and write in the comments which city you're watching from. Let's see how far this message will reach. My name is Emily Rose Carter. I grew up in Austin, Texas, the daughter of college professors. I spent my life convinced that God was an ancient myth, useful only for keeping people in check. Philosophy was my gospel. Darwin, Marx, Nietzsche, these were the names I revered. At home, anyone who mentioned Jesus was the butt of jokes, until the night my heart stopped. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink much, I exercised, but I was always anxious and suffocated. That day, after a horrible fight with my brother about religion, I made fun of him for being a Christian. I went to my room overcome with such deep anguish that I was shaking from head to toe. I tried to calm myself down, but the pain in my chest hit me like a dagger. I felt my heart skip a beat. The lights around me went dark. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, but nothing came. My vision went black like a light bulb exploding. I thought I was going to disappear forever, but I woke up in a luminous void. It was light, but not soft light. It was a living, conscious light that saw through me. I had no body. I was just mind, soul, fear. The silence there was not calm. It was overwhelming, as if I had been ripped out of time. Suddenly, a sound boomed all around me. It sounded like a million voices murmuring a deep lament. I heard names, dates, tragedies. I saw buildings crumbling, fields burning, crowds weeping. A flaming wheel appeared before me, like a cosmic clock, but it didn't tell time. It told events, and all the hands stopped at the same point. Now, I saw scenes so clear that I thought I was going crazy. I saw New York with skyscrapers on fire. I saw the White House surrounded by soldiers. I saw the Nevada desert open up into gigantic fissures. Then I heard a voice that was not a voice, but that sounded inside me like thunder. Time is up. I was shaking without a body to shake. I tried to call for help, but I had no mouth. I felt my being torn to pieces by shame, because I knew that I had laughed at God. I knew that I had called those who believed idiots. I knew that I had been warned 1,000 times, but I had never listened. Then a being made of such intense light appeared before me that I could not look at him. He had no human face, but he emanated absolute authority, and he said without moving his lips, "You scoffed, you rejected, but today you will see." I saw the clock stop turning. In flaming letters, a sentence appeared, "The last call." Around him, millions of souls screamed, begged for more time, but the pointer did not move any further. The voice spoke again. "There will be no other warning. Tell the world, he is coming." At that moment, I saw something terrible. A bright line on the horizon cracked like shattered glass. On the other side, a light brighter than 1,000 suns appeared, but with it came a flaming army. I saw the flags of nations being consumed. I saw churches catch fire, not physical fire, but spiritual fire, revealing rot behind polished pulpits. I saw pastors dressed in gold, preaching to mesmerized crowds, while behind them shadowy creatures fed on the applause. I heard the voice, "They do not preach my name. They do not expect my coming, but you will say." I tried to shrink back, but there was no way. I saw my own face reflected in the light floor, marked with words that looked like hot iron: cynical, arrogant, lost. I felt a pain that was not physical, but much more terrible. Then the being of light pointed to the stopped clock and said, "When you see Israel tremble, when they cry out for peace and security, when they divide what is mine, you will know that the time is up." The images came faster. I saw Jerusalem as a bride in flames. I saw treaties being torn up. I saw soldiers marching through the ancient streets. I saw the sky open in an indescribable light, and I heard a voice that echoed throughout the entire cosmos. "Here I am." At that moment, I felt myself falling apart. There was no more chance for argument. There was no more philosophy. There was only truth, a living truth that crushed me but at the same time purified me. Finally, I heard the words that sealed it all. Don't wait for another sign. Speak. This is the last call. Then everything went black. And when I woke up, the sound of that voice still vibrated inside me like 1,000 bells ringing at the same time. I was there, floating in an abyss of light and darkness mixed together, when I was pulled upward by an irresistible force. It wasn't like flying. It was like being dragged along by a truth that accepted no apologies. I walked up corridors made of transparent fire. On each side, I saw images projected like living holograms. It was the entire history of the world, but with the spiritual backstory exposed. I saw crowds watching news reports about peace while demons whispered in the ears of world leaders. I saw diplomatic meetings in Washington, in Geneva, in Beijing, all filled with smiling faces and shaking hands. But in the air floated contracts made in blood. Then the being of light spoke within me. Don't be fooled by appearances. The enemy doesn't come with horns, but with promises. Suddenly, I was thrown into a vision of an American megachurch. There were colorful lights, a band playing, and applause like at a concert. But the pulpit was empty inside. I saw right through the pastor. He was a hollow shell. His voice spoke of love and prosperity, but he never said the name of Jesus with fear. Behind him, dark creatures fed on the applause, laughing. They didn't attack, they charmed. The voice whispered, "They do not prepare the people for my return, they lull them to sleep." I was desperate, wanting to close my eyes, but I had no eyelids to escape. I saw believers with cell phones in their hands, scrolling through screens during the service. I saw pastors selling blessings as products, and I heard a deep sound, like a cosmic siren. "Wake up!" My spirit trembled. Then I was thrown into another scene. I saw Israel as a woman dressed as a bride, but with a torn veil and tears in her eyes. Her streets burned with spiritual fire. Invisible troops were gathering at the borders. I saw international treaties being signed, with the division of Jerusalem as the bargaining chip. I heard the phrase recorded like a decree again. "Whoever touches Jerusalem touches the apple of my eye." Then I saw the celestial clock again, but now it was cracked, as if an earthquake had broken it. From within the cracks, fire poured out like lava. Each number burned. In the center, in living letters, it pulsed. Time no longer exists. I couldn't think. My mind was screaming. Then a crowd appeared, people naked of soul, with nothing to hide. Some shone like stars. Others were covered in dark, weeping smoke. A voice said, "This is the sieve, the wheat and the chaff. There will be no time to change sides." I cried without tears. I tried to say it wasn't fair. I wanted more time. But the answer was a silence as heavy as a rock. Suddenly, the sky opened up. It wasn't a pretty sight. It was terrifying. It was like seeing eternity itself ripped apart. And there, on the highest throne, was a light so pure that it destroyed everything that was false. Then I heard a sound, a trumpet. It was no ordinary sound. It was a decree, a judgment, a summons. All around me I saw angels wielding flaming swords, but they did not scream. They wept. Their tears were liquid fire that fell upon the earth. Wherever they touched, they exposed rot. Churches, governments, families, nothing was hidden. I heard the final voice, like the roar of 1,000 oceans. "Tell the world, this is the last call. He who has ears, let him hear. He who has eyes, let him see. There will be no other sign." Everything turned white, so white that there were no more shadows. And then I felt myself falling back, like a weight released from the gravity of a forgotten world. The light was fading, but before everything went dark, the phrase was etched in my mind like fire. "Jesus is coming. Get ready." Just when I thought the light was going to go out, I was pulled to an even higher place. There was no floor, no ceiling, just a vortex spinning in fire and light. It felt like I was in the center of a spiritual hurricane. All around me, voices were crying out in ancient languages that I didn't understand, but that made my soul tremble. Then the sound suddenly stopped. Before me appeared a gigantic gate of glowing bronze, covered with symbols I had never seen before but which my mind comprehended without effort. Each symbol was a sentence, a verdict, and when the gate opened, I was pushed inside. Inside there was no landscape, there was pure consciousness. It was as if I had entered the thoughts of God himself. I saw every lie I had told, every laugh I had made while mocking Christians, every debate in which I had humiliated those who had faith. I saw the domino effect of my words, eroding the fragile faith of colleagues, planting cynicism in trivial conversations. I saw friends abandon their convictions after my clever ironies. Shame swallowed me like a raging sea. A voice spoke so clear and terrible that I wished I didn't exist. You asked for the truth. It's here. Then the views changed. I saw the United States from above, as if on a living map. I saw giant churches with neon signs, filled with clapping worshipers, but whose spiritual ceilings were made of cracked glass. I saw pastors rehearsing jokes from the pulpit, while dark beings gathered behind them like clouds of flies. In every auditorium I saw glazed eyes, satisfied with pleasant messages. But behind those faces their souls were hungry and dry as paper. The voice spoke, "They do not preach my return. They do not announce my judgment. They sell comfort." My spirit screamed without making a sound. Then I was taken to a dark alley in a big city. I don't know if it was Chicago or Houston. I saw a drugged man lying on the ground, but behind him, a legion of shadows drank his despair like vampires. I heard the voice, "You thought they were inferior. I saw them as sons." I cried without having a face to wet. Next, I was thrown into the middle of a desert. The ground cracked like dry skin, but beneath the surface there were rivers of light. I saw people kneeling alone, whispering prayers that no one could hear. Each word made the light shine brighter. The voice sounded soft but firm. "These are mine. This is the remnant." I saw elderly people praying in abandoned homes, children hiding away, reading Bibles lit only by flashlights, young people kneeling in college dorms while everyone else laughed at them. I realized that I had never belonged to them. Suddenly, everything shook. A trumpet sound, shrill like 1,000 alarms going off at once, filled the space. Then I saw a colossal throne. It was not human. It was made of something alive, as if it breathed glory. Before it, angels covered their faces. They dared not look, and I, arrogant, shrank like an insect. The voice boomed like a verdict. "Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess." At that moment, I saw the name Jesus written in the sky with fire. The fire spread, burning all the lies, philosophies, false religions, and leaving only ashes. People screamed. Some fell to their knees. Others covered their ears, shouting so they couldn't hear. The voice spoke for the last time. "There will be no other call. This is the last one." Then everything went black. But before nothingness swallowed me, I saw something like an inscription in pure light. "Jesus is coming. Prepare or perish." And the sound of that sentence was the last thing I felt before I was sucked into absolute darkness. I thought I had disappeared into nothingness. But I was sucked in by a force so intense that I felt myself passing through the very fabric of time. Suddenly, I was hovering over the entire planet, not as a pretty blue globe, but as something sick. I saw spiritual cracks tearing apart continents. From each fissure, dark smoke billowed into the sky like inverted incense. I heard groans, not human, but from creation itself. The mountains screamed. The oceans groaned. The skies shrank like burning skin. A thunderous voice echoed, "The world has been warned." Below me, I saw wars breaking out like simultaneous fires. I saw treaties being torn up in dark chambers. I saw tanks rolling through the ruins of cities. But more terrible than the physical wars were the spiritual wars. I saw armies of light and darkness clashing above the heavens. Lightning slashed through the clouds like flaming swords. Angels shouted words that sounded like trumpets of judgment. I wanted to cover my ears, but I had no ears. Suddenly, I was pulled closer to the surface. I saw wide-eyed children staring at hypnotic screens. I saw parents cursing each other at dinner tables. I saw wealthy churches holding glamorous events while beggars slept on the steps of the temple. The voice spoke, sad and angry. "They forgot my house." I felt a cold chill of terror. Then I saw a single city shining like gold, Jerusalem, but its walls were bleeding. I saw invisible armies surrounding it, their spiritual spears pointing toward the center. I saw world leaders with papers in their hands, dividing the city with pens. The sky shook. The voice boomed, shaking everything. "When you touch what is mine, you will know that the end has come." The ground beneath Jerusalem opened up. From within, a river of fire exploded into the sky. I saw flaming letters writing in the air. "The book is closing." Then I was sucked into a tunnel of bright light, sharp as blades. Every inch I passed exposed me. I saw my sins projected on the walls like a grotesque film. my mocking laughter, my sarcastic articles against Christians, the debates in which I humiliated those who had faith. I screamed without sound. The light shouted back, "You laughed at the truth." Then, at the end of the tunnel, I saw a towering throne, enveloped in white flames that burned without consuming. I could not see who was sitting there, only a presence so holy that my entire being dissolved into spiritual dust. Around the throne, millions of spiritual beings prostrated themselves, chanting something so powerful that it split space. It was not music. It was decree. Holy, holy, holy. That sound crushed any pride. I tried to run away, but there was nowhere to go. Then the voice spoke directly to me. Without sound or human language, "You have mocked. Now you will testify." At that moment, I saw the celestial clock again, but it had no numbers on it. It had only one word engraved in fire, "Now." And all around him, souls cried out for mercy. I saw them trying to climb up, but something dragged them down like living chains. The voice rang out once more, final and irrevocable. There will be no other sign. There will be no other chance. This is the last call. Suddenly, a flash like the explosion of 1,000 suns pierced me. I felt everything in me die and be born at the same time. And before being swallowed back into nothingness, I saw the phrase, "Giant," filling the entire universe. Jesus is coming. Get ready. It was the last thing I noticed before I disappeared into the leaden darkness. I thought I had disappeared into the darkness forever, but I realized that the darkness was not empty. It was alive. It wrapped around me like cold hands. I couldn't see my body. I had no body. I was just consciousness. But all around me, voices whispered, thousands of voices. They cried. They cursed. They begged. I realized I was not alone in that void. There were other souls. I saw no faces, only presences, like conscious shadows. Some were screaming for mercy. Others were cursing God, spewing insults. Then a light tore through the darkness. It wasn't a comforting light. It was a cutting torch, like the gaze of someone who had always known the truth. The light fixed on me. I felt every lie I told turn into embers in my being. I felt the weight of every time I made fun of Jesus. Every time I called Christians weak or ignorant. The voice sounded again, this time without any softness. "Did you know?" I meant to say I didn't know, but the word died before it was born. Then the scene changed. I was standing above a huge auditorium like a megachurch in the US. Stage lights, giant screens. The preacher laughed with the audience, told spiritual jokes. He talked about success, how God wanted to make them millionaires. But behind the stage, the spiritual wall was cracked like glass. From within the cracks, dark beings lurked, hungry. The voice said, "They sell my name for applause, but they do not announce my coming." I was pulled to another place, a small wooden church in the countryside. Few people, some on their knees. Their prayers rose like golden flames, opening a light on the spiritual ceiling. The voice spoke softer. "They still wait for me here." My heart burned with shame. Then I was drawn to see American cities. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. I saw towering buildings, screens flashing advertisements. But on the rooftops, I saw spiritual symbols, open eyes, hungry mouths. The voice sounded like a sentence. "They cry for freedom, but they chose chains." Then the ground shook. I saw the ground opening up. From within, black smoke filled with screams rose. And above, politicians smiled for the cameras. They signed treaties. They promised peace. But in the spirit world, I saw spectral hands tearing up maps, borderlines on fire. In the midst of all this, Jerusalem appeared again. But now it was surrounded by invisible armies, millions of them. Above, the sky was red as blood. The spiritual walls were bleeding. The voice screamed and made the cosmos tremble. "Whoever touches Jerusalem touches me." Suddenly, the celestial clock appeared overhead. It was covered in cracks. Each number burned like coal. The hands trembled, trying to move, but they were stuck. A single word appeared and disappeared in the center, like a burning warning. "Now, now, now." And then the trumpet sounded, a sound so loud it tore through the sky. I saw the veil between the worlds opening. An army of light appeared, but in front of it, an indescribable figure. I couldn't look. It was pure light. It was living holiness. The name Jesus appeared behind him, not as a word, but as the very substance of space. The shadows retreated, howling with hatred. The souls around me screamed. Some begged for more time. Others cursed him right there. But the clock was no longer ticking. The final voice rang out, so powerful that I felt my being shatter. This is the last call. There will be no other. Then I saw a burning inscription fill the entire space. Get ready. Jesus is coming back. The vision burned into me like a red-hot iron. Everything began to fade away in an explosion of light and sound, like 1,000 universes colliding, and I was sucked into absolute nothingness. Just when I thought there was nothing left to see, I was thrown like lightning down a corridor of screaming winds. I spun around and around. The voices around me were like a funeral choir, singing in forgotten tongues. They didn't call for help. They announced judgment. I felt my soul tear like wet paper. Then I was spat out onto a vast black plateau. There was no ground, just solid darkness, like smoked glass. Above me, the sky was a ceiling of heavy clouds, pulsing like a sick heart. But in the center, there was an altar of living fire, and on it, a scripture appeared in flaming letters. The truth you denied. Without me wanting to, I was dragged closer. I saw scenes projected onto the altar. Classrooms where I taught my students to doubt God. Barroom conversations where I made jokes about Christians. Messages I wrote saying, "Religion is for wimps." Each phrase echoed in the air like a sentence. The altar returned the words to me like knives. The voice sounded like a stone crushing bones. You did not sin through ignorance. You mocked by choice. My attempts to justify died before they were born. Then, without warning, the altar burst into flames and lit up everything around it. I saw millions of souls. They were bound in chains that were not of metal, but of broken promises. Each chain vibrated with words I recognized. Not now. One day I will change. God will understand. People pulled on the chains, but they tightened. High above, I saw a colossal book. Its pages were made of liquid light. Each page had names, prayers, tears, but the last page was still white, and above it, there slowly appeared in flaming letters, "It's closing." I felt absolute terror. The voice, now like 1,000 thunders in unison, proclaimed, "There will be no other sign." The chains snapped, not to free, but to hurl the souls into the abyss around them. I saw their expressions frozen in eternal shock. I screamed without sound. Then the scene changed. I was standing on a map of the United States, but the map was alive. The cities glowed like electrical circuits. I saw people connected by invisible wires, data, networks, control. Above them, a gigantic shadow stretched out clawed hands made of false light. The voice spoke, cold and impersonal. They traded freedom for security. They sold their souls for convenience. I saw churches closed, sold off to become condominiums. I saw megachurches packed to the rafters but with pulpits empty of life. I saw pastors smiling for the cameras, but inside them, there was only one echo: give them what they want to hear. Then, in a flash, I was transported to Jerusalem again, but this time there was no visible war. There was silence, a silence so thick it was as heavy as lead. In the center of the city, a lamb covered in wounds was bleeding. The blood ran down the ancient streets, illuminating the alleys. The voice spoke in a sharp whisper, "They divide what is mine. They ignore my blood." Then I saw the flags of all nations gathered on a single tower, towering high, like the ancient Babel reconstructed. At the top, a single inscription glowed like unholy neon. One people, one voice, one king. I trembled. The voice rang out, now like a knife in the flesh. "Their king is not I." The celestial clock appeared for the last time, but now it had no hands. It was cracked, broken into 1,000 pieces floating in space. In each fragment, the same phrase burned like a living fire: "Jesus is coming back." The fragments began to fall like flaming rain upon the world. Wherever they fell, they burned lies, exposing, judging. Then the voice cried out, and it was not sound. It was a judgment that could not be disobeyed. "This is the last call." I felt my essence disintegrate. It was like dying within death, and before everything turned to final darkness, a light tore through the universe like a sword. "Get ready. He is coming." The phrase was engraved like fire in my soul, and I was sucked back into the void. hearing an endless echo of trumpets sounding far away, but getting closer. I didn't know who I was anymore. In the void, I had no name. I had no body. I was just raw perception, exposed like a skinless nerve. And yet, I kept seeing it. A gust of spiritual wind blew through me as if I were made of smoke. I was thrown into a bottomless abyss. As I fell, I saw inscriptions on the dark walls, phrases that I myself had said throughout my life. God is a fairy tale. I am the master of my destiny. The Bible is trash. Each sentence was a knife piercing my soul. I wanted to cover my eyes. I had no eyes. Then the abyss was filled with white fire, a fire that did not burn to illuminate. It burned to reveal. Inside, I saw familiar souls, college classmates, childhood friends, distant relatives, all of them standing still, frozen in soundless terror. What hurt the most wasn't the fire. It was the incurable regret. Above them hovered an inscription in embers. They did not believe. A chorus of laments echoed. More time, more time. But the answer was a crushing silence. Then I was pulled out of that well and thrown up, way up. From there, I saw the entire planet, but not as a pretty blue globe. I saw red lines like open wounds snaking across the continents. Each line pulsed like infected veins. From every point of human light rose a thin smoke, unspoken words, broken promises, muttered blasphemies, empty prayers. I saw grand churches turn into spiritual ruins before my eyes. Roofs cracked like rotten husks. Crucifixes fell to the ground and turned to ash. Around them, a crowd was singing, but it was a lifeless song. The voice spoke, like thunder over still water. They sing to themselves. I was pulled closer to the people. I saw their faces, happy, confident, secure, but in their eyes, there was only emptiness. Their hands held contracts, diplomas, credit cards, cell phones, but the chains were clasped around their wrists like glittering jewels. The voice was filled with sadness. I called them, I warned them, but they preferred prison. Suddenly, the entire earth shook beneath me. Mountains exploded as if they were screaming. Oceans rose in walls of water. The sky tore into lines of light. In the midst of this chaos, I saw a city surrounded by fire, Jerusalem. Upon its walls, an inscription flamed in vivid letters, "The Bride and the Blood." I saw armies surrounding her, not men, but shadows armed with hatred. Their spiritual spears shone like black glass. In the center of the city, a lamb bled. Each drop set the ground on fire. The voice rang out, this time more seriously than anything. "Whoever divides what is mine will be divided to himself." I tried to scream. I couldn't. I was thrown high into the air, beyond the clouds. There I saw a throne, not a human throne, a vortex of light and living glory, so intense that the space around it trembled like hot air over asphalt. All around, beings of light prostrated themselves. They did not dare to look. Only one name was written, but not with ink, with pure essence, Jesus. And when I read that name, something in me cracked. All my philosophies, jokes, certainties, everything shattered like thin glass. The light pierced through me, exposing every corner of my soul. I saw my good deeds, but they were dirty rags, trying to cover festering wounds. The voice sounded like a sentence. "You thought you were good, but I look at the heart." Then the celestial clock appeared once more, but now it was just an empty circle. No hands, no numbers, just a crack opening up the middle, and from within it, a single word in living fire. Now. The sound of trumpets filled everything. They weren't pretty. They were alarms, final calls. I saw angels marching with flaming swords. I saw the sky opening into cracks of light. I saw the planet tremble as if it were a grain of sand in a cosmic storm. The final voice screamed like 1,000 raging oceans, "This is the last call." And before everything disappeared, a phrase was engraved in fire over the entire universe. "Jesus is coming. Get ready." And it was the last sound, the last sight before she was sucked into absolute nothingness. I thought nothing was the end, but even nothingness had a voice. In the absolute darkness, I heard a whisper that didn't come from outside, and it came from inside me. "You will see more yet." And before I could resist, I was pulled like a fragment of dust into a white-hot flash. Suddenly, Everything around me became an immensity of transparent glass. I saw every soul of humanity, as if they were all suspended in crystal chambers. Millions of people, motionless, with their eyes open in astonishment. Some chambers glowed like golden torches. Others belched black smoke, and on each one, a word was written: prepared, warm, lost. I trembled, because I knew where I was. My chamber was covered in gray fog, a fog made of pride and sarcasm. I tried to scream for help, but there was no voice in me. Then the entire space shook. Cameras began to move, sliding toward a central point, like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. In the center was an altar made of pure white light, so intense that it cast no shadow. It simply revealed everything, and above it, a single inscription burned, alive as conscious fire: the throne of the Lamb. The cameras arrived before the altar, one by one. As the light touched each person, everything false burned away. Masks, excuses, traditions. What was left was the exposed heart. I saw religious leaders fall to their knees, trembling. I saw atheists cry out in despair. I saw children embraced by angels. I saw multitudes who had repeated empty prayers but never loved the truth try to flee. The voice sounded like distant thunder. You thought I would keep quiet. Then everything disappeared again. I was thrown into another vision. I was standing over a huge city, glass skyscrapers, brightly lit streets, people rushing about. But when I looked closely, I saw that each person had a glowing mark on their forehead, like a code. Those who bore the mark walked confidently, proudly, but behind them, shadows walked, smiling with razor-thin teeth. The voice spoke, cold. They think they are free, but they belong to the king of lies. The entire city pulsed like a corrupt heart. Every screen, every sign, every advertisement repeated the same words: peace, security, unity. And in invisible letters that only my soul could see, a phrase pulsed behind it all: the throne of man. I wanted to turn away, but I was drawn to the center, where a black tower rose until it disappeared into the clouds. At the top, an empty throne, and above it, an inscription that chilled me to the core of my soul: waiting for the one who is coming. The glow grew until the city exploded in spiritual flames. Suddenly, I saw the celestial clock for the last time, but now it was completely shattered. The fragments whirled through space like flaming meteors. Each piece carried a single word that repeated itself over and over and over: Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. The trumpet sounded again, but this time it was different. It was not a warning. It was a summons. It was the final march. I saw the heavens roll up like a scroll, the stars fall like sparks, the angels raise swords that shone brighter than the sun, and I saw the throne of glory, not in symbol, but in essence. An absolute center of holiness so pure that all the space around it trembled. And there, before him, every human argument fell silent. The voice boomed, and it was the voice of one who has always existed and always will exist. This is the last call. And as if the entire universe breathed at once, I heard a single sound. It was a trumpet so loud that it seemed to break the last veil separating heaven and earth. And then, in letters of fire that took over everything, I saw, Jesus is coming back. That name became everything: air, light, sound, truth. I had no identity left. I had no resistance left. There was only absolute reverence and the certainty that nothing, not science, not philosophy, not unbelief, could stop what is coming. Before everything exploded in a final flash, I heard the last sentence, marked in eternity: there will be no further notice. And then I was swallowed up by total white. And then everything went white, absolute white. It was as if I had been dissolved into pure light. There was no more sound, no more form, no more identity, only the naked, living truth. There were no questions there. There was only the answer: He is. I felt every particle of my existence being traversed by that certainty. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a theory. It was a person, alive, eternal, holy, and he was coming back. I knew, not because they told me, but because I saw. The last thing I heard in that dimension was the phrase engraved like fire in my soul: go, give notice. This is the last call. Then, as if someone pulled an invisible string, I was pulled from that place. I felt my being compressed, forced back into a space too small to contain everything I had seen. I started to fall. I fell through layers of darkness, of wind, of distant voices. I felt weight again, gravity, density, pain. Then came the sound. A continuous beep, an insistent beep. I heard muffled voices, quick orders, alarms going off. The light was no longer holy. It was cold, fluorescent. I opened my eyes. The clarity hurt me. My chest hurt like it had been crushed by a steamroller. A tube was jammed down my throat. I tried to move my hand. Wires, needles, monitors. I saw faces with surgical masks, scared eyes. A voice whispered near me, "She's back." I felt a hot tear trickle down the corner of my eye. It wasn't of relief. It was of terror and awe, because I knew what no one else there knew. I hadn't come back just to live a little longer. I went back with an order engraved in me like fire. Warn, there will be no other sign. Time is up. Jesus is coming. And even as the doctor shouted instructions, as the machines beeped, as my heart raced back to life, I heard in the background the echo of that trumpet. The last call has already sounded. I breathed, and with the air came the unbearable weight of knowledge. Nothing would ever be the same again. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.